celebrated chef who has been featured on shows like Top Chef, The Next Thing You Eat, Chopped, and Iron Chef. His restaurant, 610 Magnolia, is a Louisville fine dining staple. In his latest book, he writes a love letter to an ingredient most of us would think of simply as a drink, bourbon. We visited him in Kentucky to explore the history and recipes that inspired Bourbon Land.
I love drinking bourbon, but I love smelling bourbon more. I think that smell is like the best perfume in the world.
For Chef Ed Lee, the conversation about food begins behind the bar.
For me as a chef, whenever I drink something, I always think about what does it do to the food that I'm cooking. And to me, bourbon is the thing.
What is it about Kentucky bourbon?
This is where it was invented, perfected, beloved.
In the barrel.
Yeah, right here in Kentucky.
Bourbon, that classic Kentucky invention whose origins begin clear as hooch whiskey, and legend has it was born on a journey south along the Mississippi River to Louisiana. Aged inside oak barrels, which matured its color and taste.
It's got a little bit of leather, it's got a little bit of vanilla, and it's got a little bit of hay. It's like everything about Kentucky right here in this glass.
At Louisville's Peerless Distillery, Lee gave me a lesson in bourbon tasting.
So I'll do just a little sip. And kind of, yeah.
Oh, wow, it really, whoa.
Yeah, it's strong.
Oh, whoa.
But that's because that's your first sip.
Wow, it really opened my mouth up.
Yeah, it does that. Bourbon shocks you.
All that comes through in his latest book, Bourbon Land.
To me, it's a very personal, opinionated view of bourbon. And it's like part recipe book, part history, part guide, part my own personal journey.
A personal journey that began in Brooklyn, New York. As the son of Korean immigrants who worked countless hours, Lee often ventured out into his neighborhood for a bite to eat.
Like in my childhood, you could wake up and have like a Jewish breakfast. You could eat pizza for lunch and then have Indian food for dinner. And it all made sense.
But it was his yearning for American staples that drew him to the family kitchen.
I wanted PB&Js and steaks and pasta. And I remember one day my grandmother said to me, she goes, if you want American food, cook it yourself.
Oh,
and that was...
the gauntlet was thrown.
And so I took my allowance money, I went to the grocery, and I bought some stuff. And I just remember that feeling of accomplishment and that feeling of like, I just cooked my own dinner.
After graduating from NYU with honors and a degree in literature, he traveled to France, learning as much as he could. Then suddenly,
I opened my first restaurant in New York City when I was 25 years old.
But not long after, tragedy struck.
9/11 happened and our restaurant was downtown. I had people that were in the towers and it was something that really affected me and I needed to clear my head. I sold the restaurant and I rented a car, drove to all the places that I'd never been to. I wound up here at a restaurant called 610 Magnolia. I worked there for a week and the owner sat me down and said, you're gonna move to Kentucky, take over my restaurant, I'm gonna retire, and you're gonna be a big success. And I said, you're crazy.
The Brooklyn native moved back to New York, but then the owner,
his name was Eddie Garber.